is called the devil's interval in musicology. That when you play 741 with 528, it creates such an annoying and dissonant energy, diseasing, stressful, that if you continue to listen to it, you could die. They have held the secret knowledge by which the pyramids were constructed based on the math. All of the universe is constructed according to these 9 tones. They knew about them. In fact, they instituted. In fact, it was the Rockefeller Foundation in 1939 that instituted the world's standard tuning. The Western world tunes to a 440 hertz frequency. That when you tune your instrument to that, the F sharp note is 741. Precisely. Not 7.41.1 or 0.2, it's 741. I began to investigate 528 by a divine revelation that was given to a Dr. Joseph Palaio back in 1997, along with the original musical scale, the original solfeggio. It was 6 notes by which the hymn to St. John the Baptist was sung. That was known as the most spiritually uplifting hymn of all the ages. And the 3rd note of that scale was miracle note, 528. So it was ut, re, mi, fa, sol, la, and the 3rd note, mi, miragistorum in Latin, means miracles in English. So from that moment on, I began to think of 528 as something very special, but I had no clue whatsoever what it really was. I had no knowledge whatsoever about it being a love frequency, nor did I have any concept that it was the prophesied key to the house of David. In the book of Isaiah in the Old Testament, 22:22, and in book of Revelation 3:6-8, it talks in the end times about an angel from Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love, coming and heralding a miraculous key that opened doors that no man can close and closed doors that no man can open. I had no knowledge whatsoever that that was 528. And now we have substantive evidence, massive amounts of evidence. It turned out that when we discovered the original musical scale, there was not just 6, but a total of 9 core creative frequencies to the universe. That is, everything in the universe is made from 9 notes, only 9. And that the first 6 are the solfeggio, and then there's 3 additional ones that form a perfect circle of sound. And that perfect circle of sound looks something like this. If you graph it. So the first 6 notes, 396, 417, 528, 639, 741, 852, was the original solfeggio scale. The 528 that you can see on my left in green is the color green. It's the heart of the rainbow. That's the miracle note from the original solfeggio note, from the original solfeggio scale. And the other note that you see, 741, which is part of nature, is called the devil's interval in musicology. That when you play 741 with 528, it creates such an annoying and dissonant energy, diseasing, stressful, that if you continue to listen to it, you could die. And so that the concept here is interesting. In the world today, we have people who are controlling virtually everything economically, geopolitically. Their agenda has been population manipulation, population control for millennia. They have held the secret knowledge, the ancient music, by which the pyramids were constructed based on the math. All of the universe is constructed according to these 9 tones. They knew about them. In fact, they instituted. In fact, it was the Rockefeller Foundation in 1939 that instituted the world's standard tuning. The Western world tunes to a 440 hertz frequency. That when you tune your instrument to that, the F sharp note is 741. Precisely. Not 7.41.1 or .2, it's 741, which meant that there was a clear, scientifically researched intent, and indeed that's exactly what happened. The 741 A440 link came out of military research in the 1930s to induce psychosocial stress and dis-ease to the max. It was selected that A440 would be the standard tuning for the Western world. In fact, quote, mass hysteria, end quote, could be induced by instituting that frequency. And now you begin to explain why you went from the era of Frank Sinatra, where women would mostly swoon over Frank. Suddenly, Elvis Presley, rioting began. It was scientifically determined for military acoustic warfare research that if you simply used A440 standard tuning, that you could engage about 6% of the population, perhaps, to actually go into this kind of crisis, into this hysteria. And that those people then, especially if they were televised and they were promoted and broadcast, could potentially affect a social, virtually British invasion. Now you begin to reconcile what happened. This information is all in the book of 528. Your heart center, your heart chakra, if you will, which spins in greenish yellow. That's the color of grass in the botanical world. That color of grass is that color because of 528. In fact, you would not have 5,280 feet in a measured mile if it wasn't for 528. You wouldn't have circles. You wouldn't have squares. You wouldn't have any sacred geometry. You wouldn't have pyramids. The pyramids are intimately constructed based on the mathematics of pi, phi. You wouldn't have pi or phi without 528. In other words, you wouldn't have anything without love. You would have nothing. The universe would not exist. 528, in essence, takes you from the heart of your heart through the heart of the rainbow, which is greenish yellow, to as above, so below, as it is in your own DNA, in chlorophyll, expressing the bounty and the glory of love throughout the botanical world. So it is in the Creator's heart.
528 hertz frequency has been determined to be nearly the precise center of the entire electromagnetic color spectrum. In other words, the center of the rainbow. At the center of the rainbow is the color green. Now you know why there's so much in the botanical world of life, so much green. Because everybody's vibing to the center of the blessing. And this is the first evidence also that we have, because your heart chakra energy vortex center is green, meaning that the center of your heart, now we have definitive evidence, is connected to the center of the universe. How magnificent is that revelation? So this concept also is additionally supported. There's only one number in the entire numbering system, whereby the electromagnetic color spectrum is the same as the sound system. That one number is 528. Both the same in color and sound. 528 hertz frequency. The sad reality is that where we now play our music is in A440. Where did that come from? It used to be 417. A440 came in with the Roman Catholic Church. They suppressed the frequencies. They lost somehow the 152 of the best Gregorian chants, including the hymn to St. John the Baptist, which we've now recovered. That particular hymn was what triggered Dr. Palaio's investigation, looking for those frequencies of vibration by which the music was played. It was known as the most uplifting hymn of all the ages, the most spiritually uplifting hymn. Hymn to St. John the Baptist. It was played to 6 tones. These are those 6 tones. These are those 6 frequencies. And so the A440 is what now is the standard tuning, that if you do the analysis You know how I just showed you that the English language is 180 degrees flipped? I mean, you couldn't get farther away before coming back in a perfect circle, back to closer to the original, right? 180 degrees, that's as far as it can get. They did the same thing with the music. If you go A439, you're closer to one of the creator's tones. If you go A441, you're closer to one of the creator's original tones. That's how precisely it has been manipulated. To do what? To shut down the 95% of your brain, particularly the right brain that operates the heart-mind to the divine human community. When you go driving your car and your channel on the radio is tuned to a station and you're grooving to the music, you love that music. As you get farther and farther away from the broadcasting tower, that music gets static. You start to lose the signal from the clear channel, broadcast, and it gets staticky. When it gets staticky, you get a little annoyed. But you want to listen to it. You really have a heart for that music, so you continue to listen to it for another 10, 15 miles, and suddenly it becomes so annoying that you just get disgusted. You go, ah, and you shut it off. And if you continue to listen to it, you get sick. That's what we're talking about here. Except you don't even know that you've been listening to the static your whole life. You don't even know what the true resonant frequency is because it has been kept from you. So in other words, the master composer, master conductor of the Universal Orchestra is singing love songs in 5/8, uplifting everything simultaneously. And we're the only species out of tune and accepting static for the clear channel. And let's look at the work of another genius in physics named Hartmut Müller. Müller is Russia's top space-time physicist. He, after years of study, created this, what he calls the standing gravitational wave of the universe. That there's one master gravitational wave out of which this entire double toroidal matrix, harmonics, and mathematics of physical, sacred, geometrical manifestation in the physical reality occurs. That single wave he calls the standing gravitational wave of the universe. And he further digests it as having subwave patterns, what he calls the N6. He says that N6 represents 6 nodes in which all of physical reality are precipitating, crystallizing, manifesting. N6. So here's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 peaks and troughs. You can see obviously how intuitively one would apply the 6 notes to those just to see what you got when you do. He also says something very interesting. He says the structure of this, the basic structure of this, simulates the double helix DNA. Now, do you see something unique popping out at you right here? You're about to see that the double wing structure of your DNA is structurally created into that simplest infinity pattern that Rodin showed us. The entire universe is spinning, just like your DNA, your genetics. And it's spinning as the mathematics is dictating. The numbers themselves are a tip-off. Let me give you the fundamental, the rudimentary origin of the numbers. Here it is. The most important numbers, 3, 6s, and 9s. Again, Tesla, who created Tesla coil. Tesla coils, energy amplifiers. Your DNA is an energy amplifier, a coil, operating by the 3, 6s, and 9s primarily. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, you probably looked at engines or motors, magnets that have been wound with copper wire. When you do that, when you wind the copper, coil the copper around the magnet, it enhances the energy dramatically. That's what your DNA is. It's an antenna to the Creator. Technically, the scientists call it photon-phonon emissions for intercellular communications. That's the primary function of DNA. Phonon is sound. Photon is light. So sound and light signaling And before there was light, there was the water and the sound. So sound and light signals come into the cells, and the DNA is in a matrix of water, mostly structured. Star of David, like he held on his shield for protection. This whole concept of your DNA acting as a spiritual receiver and uplifter. Sources from the mathematics, and it's not what the Rockefeller eugenics industry tells us DNA is all about. They say the function of DNA is to serve as a template for the production of new proteins. You have DNA going to RNA to amino acid, bringing together amino acids at the ribosome, the genetic or the controlled protein manufacturing station of the cell to build new proteins and cell parts. That's what they say all of genetics is about. It's a template, they say. But you know what that is? It's less than 4%. It's about 3% of the function of DNA. Just like you're using 95% of your brains, they've secreted and suppressed that part of you, just like they've done the same thing with genetics. 93% of the function of DNA is light and sound reception and transmission. Photon, reception, transmission for intercellular communication and cellular upregulation. Now, to further share with you and show you the science by which I can share with you assuredly, your DNA is an antenna to the Creator that operates like a Tesla coil because of the creative juice in you. Water, specifically, most frequently, the matrix of DNA is the six-sided hexagonal shaped structured water molecule. And this is from science that Lee Lorenzen shared with me, and he shared with Dr. Emoto. This is from the journal Science. This is from Ron Sakeley's team, University of California, Berkeley, water scientists, who took DNA and evaluated how much energy potential is held in the genetic strands, and then changed the structured water matrix. They pulled the water out of the matrix and then rechecked to see if the strands were still spiritually or energetically active. And so here you can see 4 strands of DNA in that beautiful Tesla coil structure. Here particularly you can see, if you lay this on its side, you see the structure of the double wing in Rodin's infinity pattern. And here you see negative 212. Here is negative 217 as an energy measure. And if they eliminated as little as 8% of the structured water out of the matrix, you lose the structure. It unfolds, and look at what happens to the energy signaling. Negative 12.3 goes down dramatically. So this is what I'm saying to you. Now, in the last segment, you learned about how the heart, we talked about how the heart is resonating at 528 love hertz frequency to the center of the universe, resonating in sync. Your heartbeat is timed, ideally by nature, exactly like that. You're in communion with nature. It has the heart-mind intelligence. It provides that intuitive or right brain function, and that the connection to the sacred spiraling of all the DNA is operating through this water-filled structure. That's what's really uplifting, and that the energy that's being, again, pumped out of you in tune with the Creator is all working in sync. It's like a divine harmony. Again, that's why I say it's the universal orchestra. The master conductor, master composer of the universal orchestra is singing love songs to everything, uplifting everything simultaneously, particularly you, through this antenna, which is in every single cell. That means that every single cell of your body has this energy capability. It has this divine intelligence. So the concept that your being, your whole being is this, as I said, bioholographic precipitation, crystallization, miraculous manifestation of divine frequency vibration coming to you in living color. And you think about this for a second. Again, going back to how it's right in front of your face, This concept of how we're going to get out of this mess, this concept of the music that shall set us free. Think about the most famous band, rock band in history, the Beatles. But what did the Beatles give us? That is exactly what I'm telling you. They gave you a feature-length movie, an animation called Yellow Submarine. What was the whole storyline? It was where you had this magnificent people full of living color. All they were doing is vibing and being creative in love and harmony, and they were playing divine music and symphonies from Sgt. Pepper playing for the community to the quartets, and all of a sudden, who comes along but the Blue Meanies? You know, this concept of beware of those who call themselves Jews who are not, said the Messiah. Today it's beware of those who call themselves Christians who are not, or beware of those who call themselves Muslims who are not. Anyway, the concept of this being a Jewish conspiracy, this globalist manipulation, a Jewish conspiracy, is in the film. You have the professor, the wise old professor, the nowhere man. This Blue Meanies come and attack, and the big boss, the crime boss, is approached by the professor, and he says, "You don't look bluish. Beware of those who call themselves Jews who are not." And then what happens is that the military of the Blue Meanies come and they take away all the music. They take the instruments. They incarcerate the instruments. And the living color, divinely created people turn into fragile black and white. That little bombs go off, mostly sound vibration bombs that shake them and they fall into pieces. And it was the mission of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band to rally the troops, to infiltrate, to release the instruments that are being captive.
So we have a choice that we can remain in dissonance, or we could literally vibe to a new song. That's a fulfillment of the book of Revelation 14:1. Where 144,000 people who hear this message, that they feel it in their hearts, and they make a choice to sing in a new key, a key of love. You reconcile from that Jesus' entire ministry. Jesus, a devout Jew, Mosaic scholar, a rabbi, absolutely said that you can distill everything to two things: love of the Creator and love for each other as brothers and sisters. And that requires us to get a new look at ourselves, to get over the traumas and the abuses and all of the issues of self-hate, all the little images that we've taken on from the mass mind-controlling media, that we compare ourselves with models 10s when we perceive ourselves to be 2s and 3s. And from that we have a distorted image of ourselves, and from that a block happens. We no longer love ourselves. Our hearts, the energy from our hearts, literally degenerate. We become a shell of the person, the spirit-filled, loving, capable, worthy human being that we were intended to be. That's how the manipulation and control has happened. We have a choice about that. We can say yes, indeed, now based on this evidence, that yes, that's part of nature, part of God's plan. But if you think about it, your own life, you never grew, you never learned the easy way, did you? You always learned primarily by pain or trauma. Lessons learned the hard way, the streets of hard knocks. That's what gave us the best lessons, the most enduring choice-making lessons. That's what we're talking about here. The question is, are we fed up enough with self-loathing? Are we fed up enough of being manipulated, mind-controlled into ignorance, dissonance, division, dividing men from women, black from white, gay from straight, Jew from Gentile, Christian from Muslim, right to left, Democrat from Republican? That's the name of the dissonant game. Divide and conquer. This whole concept of love, the universal healer, is what the book of 528 is all about. The beauty of this is that more and more of us play music in the key of love. It's like a pebble in a pond. You throw a pebble in a pond and the waves flow out in circle array to the farthest shores. The universe is made of water. Not only does the Bible say that, but NASA science proved that about 10 years ago when they discovered water throughout space. That means when you play 528 or sing, even better, in 528, that energy flows virtually universally, certainly across the planet, affecting as a miracle frequency the hearts of humanity, so that the heart chakras are open and beginning to spin. And as we spin this in terms of the eliminating the dissonance and regenerating the harmony, and so that's really what the book of 528 is. It's a slam dunk on the science and the mathematics of love. You'll recognize after reading this book that there's not only the scientific proof, then it's very interesting for, left brain rational Harvard graduates like myself to kind of like consider what is this? Is this for real or is this some scam? And then when you see and you are faced with the realities, such as the chlorophyll molecule resonates in love. That's why it's like matches the heart of the rainbow, which is greenish yellow, which is 528 hertz frequency, which is exactly like the tone that's coming from the sun as measured by NASA science. You begin to realize that if you want to satisfy your left brain and your ego, you can do that with the book of 528. But that's really not where the action is. The action is in your heart mind, not your ego mind. And so the beauty of the revelations in the book of 528 is that we can literally accept that evil and poor choice making is a part of nature, is a part of human development and even evolution of the species and involved in survival of the fittest for sure. But you know what? It's secondary to the sustaining miraculous power of love. And that's in your heart.